Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. All right. I am joined today by Claire. I'm so excited to have her with me today. She is, man, you've been with me, what, coming up like a year now.
Yeah. I think we just passed it. I think I had looked it up and it was just a year. Yeah.
Yeah. So fun. So we've done lots of fun things together, been on a bit of a journey, and she was gracious enough to be willing to hop on and share some of her experiences. And yeah, so we're just gonna chat, hang out here for a little bit, and maybe at the end even show you guys a little bit of what live coaching looks like. So you get a taste of what it's like. And yeah, so thank you so much for being willing to do this.
Sounds great.
Awesome. Why don't we just kind of start there at the beginning? Why don't you paint the picture a little bit of where you were when we met and kind of what drew you in? And
yeah, I've never done any kind of coaching before. I've done therapy, which was very beneficial for me, but about a year ago, well, my mom passed away a year and a half ago, and I was having a lot of very deep grief and depression, and I haven't regularly struggled with depression in my life, so it was something that was really new to me. Maybe not new, I should say. I've had grief before, but this kind of deep level. And so I honestly don't remember exactly how I came across Emily. Somewhere on Instagram, somebody had just shared something, or she popped up on my searching screen. I don't remember, but I found her just at a time when I was feeling so low, like nothing I was doing made any difference. I was also simultaneously going through a faith crisis as a member of the Mormon church. So those two things combined, I just was feeling really, really low. And I think the first time I met with Emily and talked with her, I think I cried through like 90% of it. So, and then I have 4 young kids. So I was just feeling very stretched thin, especially emotionally. And I just, again, I don't even remember what drew me in initially. But I was just looking for kind of answers outside of what I already knew, and methods I'd already tried, and especially with spirituality, I was just feeling really like not fulfilled. And so I remember just the first time talking with Emily, and she was just very validating, and there was just no judgment at all. And I probably had been judging myself a lot, and, just not a lot of self-compassion. So, and I have a lot of loving people in my life, but for some reason, things just clicked with Emily, and it just aligned for me, like financially, to be able to invest in it, which is not something that I had been able to do in the past. So that was kind of a big deal. But, just all the green lights seemed to flash and it just felt good. So that was kind of my start.
Yeah, I love it. It's so fun hearing the stories and like thinking back to when I first meet people and who they are after we finish working, and just being like, the difference is so fun to think about. And it's always fun to see those stories too, of like things line up, right? That's a huge personal philosophy for me, is this idea of alignment, and that when we're seeking to do that, the right people at the right time with the right means all come in together and click. And so it's cool to see that even before you were aware of that or doing any of that, like it was playing out, it was showing up.
Yep.
We're getting to experience it. So
yep. Cool. Yep. It was exactly what I needed. Like it just was probably one of the only moments in my life where I just knew pretty instantly that this is what I need to reset and pull myself out again. So
yeah. And it's so fun on my part to be able to hear that, because that's a big part of my focus, is like, those are the people I want to really be working with, especially on like a long-term basis like this. And so it's cool to see when those two needs and desires meet up with together, that instant almost feeling of connection that can happen.
Well, and it's hard when you're working with a therapist or a life coach. You feel it's so vulnerable, and it's so easy to get taken advantage of. I've never had that experience in therapy or in life coaching, thankfully, but I just know of a lot of people that have, and especially our our world of MLM marketing. And it's hard to put your trust, especially when you're, investing a huge amount of money. So that was a big part of it for me, was building trust in those things again. Cause I have been burned by like MLM stuff, and I have the type of personality that will get sucked into that easily too. So that actually was a lot of growth, not even, apart from spiritual and life coaching, was just learning to trust a process like that again.
Yeah, totally. It's especially even in the coaching world too, it's kind of been like every other industry, the shadow starts coming up, right? When something starts gaining momentum. And so it can become easy to be like, oh, they're just charging this much because they want a quick buck or whatever. It's like, oh, this is a new thing I can hop on or whatever. And it's so important to me, like for my protection, for your protection, to be in a space of this needs to be right for both of us, because if it's not right for you, it is not going to be right and good for me. I'm not going to be able to help you. We're not going to be able to have the right experience. There's somebody else who's supposed to help you if it doesn't feel right to work together, and that's there for both of our benefit. But at the same time, it can be tricky to navigate, because sometimes there's a little bit of that's like your first growing process, is even just saying yes. And like, can I really invest in myself? Can I really do this? And it can bring up a lot of emotions and a lot of resistance. And it's really easy to take those natural labor pains, I want to say, of like this new growth that's available to you as a sign of like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't, or this isn't right, or I'm not actually aligned with her. Yeah,
definitely.
And so for you, what do you feel like really helped you to be able to say yes, especially knowing your personality and experiences you've had? Was there anything that stood out?
You were never pushy. It always came through as like my complete choice. And so that was something I had been deconstructing, the history of feminism and patriarchy. And I was very much in like this space of like, nobody is going to tell me what to do or even suggest what to do. Like I am 100% needing to make all my own choices, even though that's hard for me. I'm like a really indecisive person. So it feels like a really huge responsibility, but then also really important. So I just never felt like any pressure. And I don't know, again, it just was like, I think was just that internal guide that just knew that, that decision wasn't as hard as maybe others in the past have been, because there was just this force that was just, this is just what you need. And there's not going to be any, and even now, like continually reinvesting, and deciding like, obviously I would probably love to work with you the rest of my life. It just feels like a friendship, and then it's a community just outside of you as well. Yeah. But now I'm continuing to make that decision. It's still like I bought some private coaching from Emily the other day, and I was like kind of by accident, I did it. Like I wasn't going to do it quite yet, but then when I was checking out, it did it. And I was like, oh crud, I probably couldn't have afforded that right now in our budget. But then I ended up texting Emily and just saying, you know what? No, I think that happened for a reason. I just needed to kind of like, I needed that extra push to just do it and have that there as my extra support. So I'm just learning that to not think of things as maybe like mistakes and non-mistakes, but just, we can gain something out of every situation. So I don't know if that connects in there, but.
I love it. So fun. So we met, you joined. Did we work together privately, or did you jump in the program first?
In the program first. Yep.
Yeah. And so this was my Risen Feminine program. It was like the early version of what I'm doing now, which is my spiritual rebirth program. And you did. It was so fun.
Got to lock the door.
Yeah, good. They know something good's coming on. We experience it all the time. We love extra visitors. So.
That's also why this is a welcoming place.
Yeah. I mean, it's to me, it's sort of like that throwback to just mother community in general. Of like we're doing life together a little bit. It's not there necessarily in the same physical way that it may have been in the past, but being able to just, yeah, this is me, this is my life, this is my experience, and we're in it together.
Yeah. And that was really a big part. I still kind of like struggle when I tell people I have a life coach. I still am working on that, like, idea of that seems silly for some reason, even though it's not. But I do love the community part of it, because I've always been such a connector, and just the relationships that I've formed in this group too. I haven't met any of them in person ever, but they're like some of my closest friends. And we talk on a daily basis now through Marco Polo. And it's just kind of like, oh, I just can't imagine not having that. So.
Well, and it's still kind of an amazing thing to me to see how quickly like the relationships and the bonds form. Because there's sort of a hesitancy on my part every time I open up a new round of like, okay, is this going to be the round where like people don't get along and like we struggle and whatnot? And it's so fun to see that again and again, there's just this space that it's like, I really intentionally try to craft and hold this environment of like, you can be open, you can be seen, you can be felt or heard, felt, held, all those things. It all came out at once, right? And just seeing it happen again and again and be like, you suddenly feel this intimacy with people. And it's like, I should know like your whole life story. We should have been friends for like 20, 30 years because of the depth of connection that I feel and experience. And it's so beautiful to get to see women just have that connection, and it happens so naturally and organically.
Well, I think it's because we all go into it knowing that's what the space is for. It's like when you meet a friend, from any other community, it's like you don't necessarily know who they are and what makes them tick and what they're interested in and like what their goal is, but we all have that shared common goal. So it's just you're not worried about those things. You already know that's like built foundation already before you even meet somebody.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's a good thing to point out too, is it speaks to the people who are willing to open up, right? To be able to have that experience. And so, yeah, that's awesome. Well, and on that note too, as you were saying, so you mentioned you going through a bit of a faith journey throughout this process and shifting things with that. A lot of the audience here, most of the people that I work with have a background in the LDS church and are in various places, right? And I know you've mentioned before your journey has taken you places that even sometimes differs from where my journey has taken me. Speak a little bit to us about what that's been like, because you mentioned there's this shared commonality and yet there's great differences as well.
Yeah. So I am 34. I've been a practicing member my whole life. I should say my dad is not a member. My mom is a member. My parents got divorced when I was 8 and I was baptized, it just kind of lucked out. My mom started going back to church when I was 8. So I've been, a member since I was 8. But I've always had a pretty clear perspective of inside and outside the church, because I have, one parent with each, and I have family that's in and family that's out. So I've had a really varied upbringing, but I've always been very devout. Got married when I was 19, met my husband, had 4 kids within 10 years. So kind of very traditional. But when my mom died, I can't even say it was like one thing. I honestly don't know what started my faith journey. Probably just allowing myself to learn a little bit more of topics that I just wouldn't allow myself to go there before. I also have a transgender brother who came out to us about 7 years ago. And so I guess that's probably what started me on my faith journey, was 7 years ago. But it was, I was still very, very much 100% in the church, even through all that. And so I think when my mom died, that was kind of the last tether of a close person to me that was like keeping me really ingrained in the church. Not that she ever made me feel that I had to be, but just it was easier once she was gone to explore my own faith. So and just to be clear, this, my faith journey has been about a lot of things, inclusion, LGBTQ issues are really important to me. patriarchy has been a big one that I didn't realize I cared so much about before a year and a half ago. But like church history and stuff, I've looked into that. It's not like a big thing. So there's some, hard stuff that I've come across, but it's not been something that's like a majority of people that leave the church, it can sometimes be centered on that. But my husband is still practicing. And so it's been very tricky to navigate that. And again, having 4 kids that, range from 12 to 3, and I'll have various levels of activity. So it's very complicated. And I think if I hadn't worked with Emily, I probably would have been, I would have had like really severe boundaries, I think, of being like out, never want to talk about the church, just want to be done. Because I've always felt that natural tendency towards that because of who I am. I just have a very passionate personality, and kind of once I commit to something, it's very easy for me to get carried away with strong emotions and just, stay there. So that's been the most helpful thing with the life coaching group, is being able to constantly hear other people's experiences in a very like zero judgment place. And so because the experience I've had outside of my coaching group is I've gotten a lot of I've felt very misunderstood and judged, even though I haven't had like really huge overt stuff. But it's a lot of little things and a lot of people, family, church members. And so I think having that balance has helped me stay really neutral in my, in the way that I see other people's faith too. Like I've just been 100% allowed myself to allow other people to be on their own journey too. And there's not been this strong pull to like need to teach people and pull people out, which, I've experienced that too with other friends that have left trying to do that with me. So that was really important. And I wanted to stay true to my own belief system and integrity of really giving everybody their autonomy. That's always been important to me. So, and having Emily's coaching has been invaluable in that way, of always being constantly reminded and reassured that what you feel is valid and what everybody else's feels is valid too. We can all have our own feelings validated, and we don't have to, for what's the word I'm looking for? We don't have to make everybody believe the way that we do.
It's beautiful. I love it. It's been really neat for me to, because was kind of vulnerable opening up a space and being like, okay, I'm going to try and bring a whole bunch of people who possibly have a hard time getting along together and say, we're all going to get along together, and we're going to be really close, and we're going to connect, and we're going to have fun together. And so for me, it was so healing to have the experience of sort of this ripple effect of that desire, where it was so wonderful to feel like I could show up and say, we'll be discussing different topics, and I'll say, this is my view, this has been my experience, this is kind of how I like to think about things. And to have you say at times of like, sometimes I don't think the same way as you, but to know that you still appreciate what was shared, and you still enjoyed how we discussed things and where the conversation went, and that there was still meaning and healing we could each exchange with each other, was so wonderful on my experience. Like, I feel like it's never just a one-sided experience here. Everything that I get to help somebody else with, they're helping me with too. There's this relationship dynamic there.
Well, yeah, because it's easy to get stuck in echo chambers, and that when you have the amount of cognitive dissonance you have when you're going through a faith journey is sometimes so overwhelming that you just don't even know your own mind and your own opinions, and it just can get really sticky and hard. And so I was just thinking, like, going through that process, I think without this, it would have felt like me just like diving off a waterfall and like head first and hitting the water, and then just like laying there for a really long time and not feeling like I get back up. But this process has been like, oh, there's some rock here supporting me as I'm going down this waterfall, and it's still pretty bumpy and it's still really, really hard, but it's much gentler than it would have been without the help and the support. Because you go from having this solid, strong community that literally encompasses every part of your life to suddenly having to do everything on your own. Like, that was really a really big part of my deconstruction, was I had to do it on my own. I had to know that I could do it on my own. But then I got really imbalanced with not trusting anybody. And so I needed to start building that trust up again in a different community. And so it was just kind of this great middle place. There's a lot of ex-Mormon communities, which I know a lot of people can thrive in and do great in, but I knew that wasn't going to be a positive, nurturing place for my type of empathic personality. So this was the middle ground for me.
I love that. Well, and that brings up another great thing of there's becoming more and more of these spaces and these experiences and these environments, which is so good because we need all of them, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, things I feel like are a little bit different here in the way we operate and the way we address things, the way we look at things. It's not your traditional faith journey support group, safe environment. And I'd love to hear a little bit from you what is different.
Well,
what you've experienced.
So growing up, my mom was an herbalist and was very kind of off the beaten path with nutrition and health. And I've been exposed to a lot of different ideas, but sometimes it can be hard to, like I was saying, to know what's trustworthy and what's just trying to, sell you something. And so I've always had a really hard time navigating that. I've always really been drawn to out of the box thinking and, taking care of myself emotionally and mentally, but it's not very structured. And so it can feel really hard and scary to navigate that. And so, having a place where I could learn about the things that are not in textbooks, and that aren't, part of our traditional faith journey. Like I just recently realized, somebody posted the other day about the difference between religion and spirituality, and they kind of listed all the things. And I just thought, well, I had been doing both of those things my whole life. I just didn't ever have the word for the spirituality part of it, for the more feminine, weight, I'm kind of imagining a really wavy dress just flowing in the wind. Those are kind of always things that always lifted me up a lot, but I just never had any language and I'm a big learner with structure and ideas and terminology and language. That just gives me, once I have an idea behind something, it's much easier for me to run with it and to, think about it and learn more and allow myself space to just, not know everything, as long as I have just a few kernels of something. And so I just had a lot of stuff going on, especially physically. I had a lot of physical symptoms of emotions, unresolved emotions that I would probably not have resolved a lot of those things had I not had this program and had language for it and validation and just allowed myself to rest. That was a big part of this journey too, was just, like you said, investing in myself and really putting kind of motherhood on the back burner for a year. That's kind of where it's felt like I've just had to drop almost every single ball and just love my kids, but also love myself more right now. Put myself first, which I haven't done before. So
yeah. And it's kind of a big thing to go from being in an environment your whole life of helping others, being there for others, concerned about others, doing things for others, to suddenly this sort of drastic, I'm going to give some attention and care and thought to me, and to rebalance that scale that got so imbalanced. That's a big amount of weight to kind of put back on yourself, to kind of view that and to be willing to do that.
Yeah. Well, again, it's like the analogy I was using of leaving the church and feeling like you're diving off the waterfall. It feels the same way when you're only focusing on yourself. Now it's imbalanced this way, and now it's imbalanced this way. And I knew I had to come back to center again, but it's just taken a lot of work, a lot of work.
Yeah, totally. It's a big experience to be walking through and to be learning. And it's been fun to hear too, because that's one of the main concepts that I use, is the whole idea of energetics, right? So there's the staircase model, which you got to learn, which breaks down this process and gives you that sort of tangible thing so you can understand and look at oh, there's a pattern here. This is not a random occurrence of events. I can
Yeah.
see where I am in each one of these stages. I can see that I'm not just tumbling off a waterfall and like thrown around in the current and I don't know what's up and what's down and whatever, but there's like an actual purpose to each part of this. And I'm supposed to be in this stream and it has a role in carrying me throughout my life. And I just need to learn how to be in the flow of it and how to trust that and how to find that balance again. And it's been fun seeing your ability and the things that you've shared and how you're finding that. Like I can rebalance faster, I can navigate these things.
Yeah, in a class we had last week, we talked a lot about shame, and Emily has also shared on her Instagram lately a lot about shame, but I feel almost zero shame anymore. And I feel like when I started this, that's probably like 75% of what I felt all day long, was just all these ways I was failing and all these things I wasn't doing. And I realized I lived with probably a lot of anxiety too, which I've always known what that is. And you can so clearly see it in other people, you kind of go, oh, that person's a little highly anxious, but I just didn't realize that was probably me too. So I've unlocked a lot of other, patterns that I've lived with continuously that I just didn't even know about until I had time to slow down.
Yeah. I kind of have this whole perspective of like all of humanity. We've been like these traumatized little kids of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is life, and trying to experience it and navigate and through everything. And we're finally in a stage in human history to be able to like pause for a minute and soothe ourselves and relearn like, oh, okay, like life is not this massive thing that is constantly out to get me, that I have to be on edge about, that I have to be trying to control and do everything just right and protect myself and protect those I care about. And to get back into that space of, spirituality is our ability to connect to that thing that is more than us, that is intrinsically a part of us, whether we speak of that as God, our higher self, source, the universe, human nature. There's this thing that binds us instinctively together, and we have to have a connection with ourselves in order to have a connection with others. And in order to establish that connection with ourselves, we absolutely find that intrinsic connection to this divine element. And so there's that whole process and journey where it can feel so selfish to say, I'm going to focus on me, I'm going to connect with me. And oftentimes we don't understand the importance of that in a spiritual capacity. And yet this spiritual development is so fundamental. You have to have that connection to this intrinsic divine thing. You have to have that connection and relationship with yourself. And then you can enter into relationship with other people and experience joy and have positive things in your life to feel fulfillment and purpose and meaning. But that spiritual component, it's the foundation of our mental health, our emotional health, our physical health. And we haven't quite fully understood what that process looks like of being a spiritual being, especially when it gets conflated with religion and trying to like navigate what does that look like.
Yeah. I've never felt like such unending permission and validation just to be. That's been a really huge theme for me. And like in things that I'm reading and other sources that I'm learning from is just being. Like, how often do we just get to be like, I don't have any checklist. I'm just going to be myself today. It's not very prevalent. It's not very common. And that still feels selfish. I'm still breaking down that, that notion that that's selfish.
It's a journey to get to that place where we can start recognizing that it starts sort of for ourselves, and usually we get to some spiritual survival piece, right? Whatever that looks like, whether it's the overwhelm, the anxiety, something happening in your life, in your relationship, there's something that sort of tips the scale so that it's like, okay, I can't ignore this anymore. My spiritual health is so core. I need to start caring for it.
Well, and that's been a big part for me, as I've realized over the last year that I was always leading from a place of fear. Within religion, it was always a fear of failing and not doing good enough and not, hitting certain milestones, or even just like going to heaven. That's just a big tenet of the Mormon faith. And it was always, I've always been worried about that. And then when I transitioned out of the church and, went on this huge spiritual change, I noticed that I started leading from a place of fear then as well, of I'm worried my kids are going to do all the same things I did, and I'm worried that they're going to get harmed in the same ways I did. And I could very clearly see that fear-based place that I was leading from, but I knew that didn't feel good either. Neither of those options felt good. And so working with Emily has helped me to work through that a lot and really let go of the fear. And I just things pop up, still here and there. And weekly, probably I'll have a little incident with one of my kids, or, within my marriage, but Emily has taught us how to be analytical and collect data without judging ourselves. And so it almost feels like I'm kind of watching a little like TV show of my life sometimes. Like I'm a lot better at just being like noticing when things coming up, and maybe I'll react in the moment still, but then, I can just be like, oh, okay, I see how that all played out, and that wasn't ideal. And here's how I'm going to, try to make that better next time without, you did bad.
Yeah. I love the idea that, life is a test, is not just like a written test, but it's that we are the experimenters. We're here to learn by saying, okay, I have a hypothesis. I'm going to put this out there. I'm going to try this. And that life is coming together to support you and to give you that information to know, yes, no, go this way, stop, speed up, slow down, whatever. And that our part is learning how to understand those different messages that were constantly being received. And that as we break that down, it's the same way as kind of learning to drive a car, and that this light means red, and now I'm going to turn here, and you can get from anywhere you are to anywhere you want to go because you learn how to operate the vehicle properly and you learn the rules of the road. And so then anywhere you want to go, it's open space.
Well, and that's one thing I've always wanted, to be that person that saw things with the glass half full. But my mom, when I was little, my mom would always call me her little storm cloud, because I'm just have a natural tendency to just be cranky and like, I just feel other people's emotions too. So it's hard for me to keep an aligned state and to feel happy, like consistently. And so I would always get down on myself for having more hard days than good days. But now I'm able to like really see those hard days and not be upset about them anymore. Just that's just what it was. That was a hard day, and have it really be part of the beautiful journey. I just finished a really good book, and it was a lot about Mary Magdalene, but the author just talked about how that is the beautiful part of life, is the constant ups and downs. We don't always have to think of it as that's so hard, rather than, no, this is actually really beautiful. Even the hard parts are really beautiful.
Yes.
That's still something I'm working on, but it really is a wonderful idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's something I'm excited about in the next round of my program here, is really wanting to emphasize this cyclical nature that we move through life. And especially as women, we are such cyclical beings. And so recognizing that how we move through and perceive the world, it is not linear. That's very masculine energy, to have this like linear trajectory. You just climb the ladder one rung after another and you get where you want to go. And that is not the feminine journey or experience at all. It has this inherent rise and fall to it. And because I feel like we haven't understood that feminine journey well, we're trying to like take this cyclical thing and stretch it and bend it and twist it to like be this straight, evened out thing. When we're judging every time we're in those lower spaces, instead of recognizing it's a part of the process, and we're not denying the humanity, and in that acceptance of it and understanding of the cyclical process, we can access more of that peace and clarity and joy. It's not a Pollyanna. It's not I'm finding some emotional neutral. It's I'm actually present throughout the whole cycle. And so I'm experiencing more of my life, but experiencing more of my life doesn't mean I'm hurting more or struggling more of my life, which is usually why we disconnect, because it's like, oh, this part is hard, or oh, this part is difficult, or oh, I don't want to feel that. You learn how to stay in that connection. And when you can stay connected to your life, you stay connected to yourself, you stay connected to others. And
yes, you feel
yeah.
always yes.
Feeling beings instead of logical beings.
Yeah.
Moving through
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah. It is. Oh, there's something else I was going to say, but I lost it now as you were talking about all that. Maybe it'll come to me again.
You're good. We'll see. And one thing I did want to touch on earlier was sometimes people get in the space of like, oh, you're going through a faith journey, so you're helping people leave the church and how to step away, and you're telling them all the reasons why the church is bad and all the things that they should be doing. Has that been your experience as we've been together?
Not at all. And it's funny because the first program that I did, Emily had incorporated our spouses a little bit and had made some specific times to actually work with the husbands. And I think my husband only made 1 or 2 of the sessions, but that was a big fear for him in the beginning because he had had some family members that had left the church and had done it in a really not open and honest way. And it just felt very like had a lot of betrayal that he was still working through. And so when when my stuff started coming up, it was really hard for him. And then to spend this, pretty large chunk of money on like this total stranger that I'm like, no, she's going to help me through my faith journey. That is the first natural thought that's like, oh yeah, she's going to help you pull you out of this church. But my husband has commented over and over and over that when I'm working with Emily, we have a more stable foundation of marriage, even though it's a mixed faith marriage and it's not easy. And I don't think it'll ever be easy. I've just come to that realization. And again, what's easy, but it won't ever be simple, I should say. Our life is complicated now, but I've been able to navigate the like really low vibration, anger, fear, emotions that are really prevalent. I've been able to really kind of weed those out. And I just don't feel a lot of that anymore, which, is not common. So I don't have this really negative relationship with the church. I can feel pretty neutral. I can accept the really good parts that I got from the church. And then I can accept the difficult parts that were a lot of the reasons I left. I just accept them both equally. And I don't feel this need to even classify myself as in or out, really. It's just, what am I this week? How am I feeling this week? And yeah, my husband has definitely seen that. I mean, even probably after like a month or two, he didn't have any of those worries, or it was pretty quick on that he saw just how much it was helping us maintain, still being in a very religious family and relationship. And yeah, it wasn't that at all. I never felt any pressure to leave and the opposite, I think, can be said too. Every time I had really heavy, hard feelings, everybody in the group always lifted me up and validated me without turning it into we all hate the church space. Very rarely, maybe there's been like 1 or 2 conversations where things have got heavy and charged because we're just talking about heavy and charged things. But Emily is really good about making it less about like church language and religion language and more like broad and general of let's explore emotions and feelings and relationships. And so it just feels safe in that way. Like there's no pushing one way or the other.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I work really hard not to have environments where the energy just gets so heavy and is not productive or conducive to growth, health, healing, happiness, any of that. And so while there's sometimes a place or that can be a crutch or just getting some validation or something, and so it serves a purpose and a tool for people who are needing that in times in their journeys, I knew that wasn't my role and responsibility, and that I really wanted to create a space where you could, have a breakup and still stay friends. You could have an argument and still stay together. You could, go through being cheated on and divorced, like any of the emotions and experiences of this relationship. There was a space for it to be seen as like there's two parties here, right? It's not just some external force coming in and destroying your life or impacting you or like, stabbing a knife in you. There's this entity that's being, and you're in a relationship together. And how is that relationship playing out, and how do you want to navigate it? And you get to choose how you move through that, and really wanting to bring the humanity and the love and the compassion that even when we differ, even when we struggle, still that ability to say, I see you as a human, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's been felt 100%. Well, I was thinking as you were saying all that, there's even been a few experiences when like just close friends now that we have our small Marco Polo groups, there's 4 of us, and everybody is so vulnerable that they'll share something that maybe I've never experienced before, but I can easily understand it now because I just know how to do that, especially through this program, is just holding an experience or an emotion that can feel really uncomfortable and hard and not running away from it. I've always been good at that, but I've been able to practice it a lot more and just feel even more comfortable with that.
Yeah. And I think that's a skill we're all kind of seeking right now, is like, no matter who you are right now, I feel like there's someone in your life who is thinking, feeling, believing, doing something differently than you. And it can be really hard of, how do we stay in relationship together? How do we stay connected? How do I support you? How do we find some point of being together when it's so sometimes like very vastly different perspectives and experiences on things, and learning that really, how do you fundamentally bear one another's burdens is the phrase we like to use, right? And to just, I can see you, I can witness you, I can connect with you, and it's not dependent upon this shared experience or shared ideology. It's deeper than that, and thus can span.
Yeah. Well, and everything that we've talked about and learned, I've always felt is like, there's always a tangible aspect to it. Sometimes even like within religion and spirituality, everything feels so untethered and out of grasp. And it's just like, you'll talk about an idea, but you 10 years later, like, I still don't really know what that means. And I never feel like that. Emily's really, really good about like very open communication, and just goes the extra mile to make sure everybody is learning the way that their personality needs to learn. It's never the same, which is really helpful. Just lots of different ideas and constructs without it feeling overwhelming too, because it's 1 week, and then if that's not something that clicks, then next week there's a new topic or a new idea, or but then at the same time it's all connected too. So
yeah, I'm so glad that you recognized that and picked up on it, because that was part of the intent, was recognizing like what speaks to one person doesn't speak to another, and how can we find these different ways and practice seeing, oh, I see it this way, oh, you see the same thing this way, oh, that's cool, it's the same thing, we didn't realize we were viewing that same idea. Here's this common language, which is what I just love about energetics, is you can take something like the atonement and be like, I don't even know what that is. It's very important and it's critical, and I need it in my life, and I'm supposed to be doing something with it. What does that mean? What does that look like? Right. And we take this common language of energetics, and it just pick a topic, pick an experience, and there's this way to articulate what's going on, to understand the relationships, to see that, oh, you're describing this, I say it like this, I see it this way, and there's that thread that can bring it together.
Well, I think that's where most problems occur, is we're just not understanding each other. and especially when our politically charged atmosphere, it's just every day you run up against something that, you feel like you're on opposite sides from somebody. And I haven't always, I think most of us aren't naturally good at that. Like, well, how can I meet somebody in the middle? And so I've learned a lot in how to do that and how to create a stable, loving environment in all of my relationships where I'm able to really understand people. And it doesn't mean we still don't click sometimes. We still don't match up, but at least they know that my love's not dependent on us feeling the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's so fun to see that usually meeting in the middle means like you have to compromise in something, you have to give up something, you have to lose something. There's this loss. I'm not getting to be all of me, and I have to sacrifice that for the sake of peace or relationship or whatever. And we just flip that whole idea upside down and be like, no, it's the exact opposite. You fill up fully as yourself, and you hold space for others to show up fully as themselves. And there's this beautiful space in between that neither one of you owns, and yet both of you is a part of, and it's something beyond you and yet fully representative of you. And it's just a whole new way of viewing relationship and connection.
I love it. And it's expansive. It's never ending. That's one thing I've felt a lot of hope in, as I feel like when I left more like structured religion, I just felt like, what now? Like, I feel like I knew everything I needed to know for my whole life. And now I suddenly know nothing. But I get very excited with each week because it's just a way to fill my brain with really like positive thoughts and ideas. And I have a hard time with like stagnation and meditation, which I'm working on that too. But in the intermediate, as I'm working on that, it still feels good to have positive, positive filled ideas and groups and thoughts. And that's what I get from this group.
Well, and that's a piece of it too, is valuable. It's like the tangible bit and the constructs and the information and the things that you learn and you're taught. Like at the end of the day, to me, those aren't even the main point or purpose of any of this. That's just sort of like a toy for your mind to play with and to have fun with and to understand the experience that's happening. But it's the energy, like the feeling of being in the space of spending 12 weeks, a month, a year, just in that energy and checking into it regularly and being exposed to it and calibrating to it, that it becomes your
having a purpose.
Yeah. Cool. Well, on that note, do you want to share with us or show a little bit of kind of what this process is like? If there's something that's been going on in your day-to-day life or what's coming up for you today, we'll show them a little bit of what routine is like.
I had ideas earlier and now they've all left my head. Let me think for just a second.
You're good. Take a sec.
Let's see. And I purposefully was going to write down a few things. So this didn't happen to me and I didn't blank.
You're good. We got caught up in a whole different energy flow, just like talking about things, and it was a completely different space. So we're transitioning here and getting back into that thing of.
Let's see. Okay, here's something I've been working through, kind of trying to figure out. I've been a stay-at-home mom for 10 years. I haven't worked outside the home. I've done a little bit like substitute teaching. That's it. But I know I'm going into a transition period where I want to start working again or going to school, but I've been hitting a lot of dead ends and I've been struggling to fight a lot of you're not good enough for that, or you don't have enough experience for that, or you've just only been a mom. And so I had a job interview last week and it was kind of like one of my friends works there and she was kind of like, oh, you're going to be a shoo-in. I still haven't heard. And so now I'm like, I should have been a shoo-in, but I haven't heard yet. I don't know. So I've been working through being okay with not knowing and not having a plan, because I really want a plan, but that hasn't been coming to fruition very easily.
Okay, say something again.
Hello?
Okay, I can hear you.
I was
having a weird thing happen when I was getting. Okay, do you hear the feedback going on right now, or is it sound continuously just me? Like, is it on par or is it overlapping?
Yeah, I just hear you. Like there's no echo or anything. Is that what you're hearing?
Yeah, like I'm hearing everything that was just said and what you're saying, and I'm trying to figure out where it's going on.
Shoot, no, I'm not hearing that.
Oh, I know what it is. Okay, here we go. It has to do with we're streaming live on YouTube. And there we go. The volume got turned up on the live stream. So I was hearing the delay of it being live streamed while you were talking, and I'm like closing everything, I'm muting things, I'm adjusting the volume, like, where is this coming from, this feedback? Okay, so a little bit of background in case anyone missed it. Haven't worked before, have 4 kids, you're getting ready to really enter into working more, and I heard something about a job interview. So tell me one more of like the succinct question we're looking at.
Yeah, well, I've had 3 job interviews now, 2 with the same place, and I really wanted to work there. I had a friend that worked there, and it was a nonprofit and like social work, which is what I want to go into, and I was so excited about it. But I interviewed twice, and I didn't get either job, and so it's just that natural tendency of like, what's wrong with me? Like, I think I'm really great. Why don't they see that? And so I'm trying to figure out a new pathway of thinking, because I know that's not true. Essentially, I know that I'm really valuable and that they'd be lucky to have me, but it just didn't work and it just didn't click. So I know that, but then I'm having to tell myself that a lot to keep that stability and that, positivity. And so anyways, I just had another job interview last week, and it was kind of like, I should have been a shoe-in kind of, they really needed people, but I still haven't heard back either. And so I'm still in this weird place of like, oh man, I thought that was going to happen for sure, and it didn't. So, but it's good. I do think that these things have been coming up though, because I've needed to learn through this process. So,
yeah, totally. Well, and that's a big part of it is, it's kind of the cliche of, at least for me, I sort of got into a space of feeling like, well, I learned something from it, was sort of like the Band-Aid way of being like, dang, that sucked. Here's a Band-Aid of like, I learned something. Yay, great. Like, why did I have to have that experience to learn that? Couldn't I have like gained that experience some other way? Like, couldn't I've gotten both the lesson and the thing I wanted? Like, why did it have to happen?
Yeah.
And inside the program, we talk a lot about shifting our perspective of, again, it's that data collection, right? It's not that something happened to you so that there's this thing that you just really needed to repeat 3rd grade, right? It's no, you're gaining this information. What is the feedback that we can be getting from that? And it comes from this idea that our thoughts, our feelings, our state of being are all foundational to creating our experiences and calling in things that connect to those. And so when we learn how to dissect sort of what's the relationship between what I'm doing and what I'm experiencing on not just a tangible, practical, but also on this undertone, energetic state of being level, that also influences things. So the place we always start with is, what is your desire? Like, what is it that you want?
And that's funny because I think I have a split desire right now. I really want to work, but I also have been dealing with some health issues, and like I'm really focusing on trying to get my body healthy again. And so sometimes I worry that I will be incapable of putting the amount of energy into a job that I need to. Although I don't think I'm like exuding that split energy in my interviews necessarily, but it's there. So I have both and opposite desires.
Yeah. Well, it's really fun because, a lot of other people, when you start getting into spirituality and you talk about energetics, and you can get kind of manifestation and intangible, and like, how do I balance all these things? And the approach that I really take to it is so much more grounded. And it's like, this is like a physics understanding, right? This is like understanding gravity and what are those things that are going on. And so one of the things we talk about is, whenever we have a split going on, it's like saying, do I want things to go down do I want the ball to roll down this ramp or do I want it to roll down that ramp? And if I am not making that clear, it's going to kind of get stuck and isn't going to be able to move forward. And so we've got to close that split. And we're always looking for what is the split you have going on in you to find that clear. And once you close it, things start to open up, you feel clear, things get smoother. So I love that you were able to recognize that split in your desire, right? And so as we start working through this, again, that's why desires are so powerful. They help us know what we want and what we don't want. And from what we don't want, we can better find clarity of more of what we do want. So you mentioned the with all of your health issues going on right now, feeling like you may not have the capacity to be able to work like you would need to. There's a model that I use where we look at our belief and our trust. Right? So the split version is, I want to do this thing. I'm not physically capable of doing this thing. And so underneath that is, are you believing or not trusting that you can do both, right? That there is an aligned job out there for you, one that fulfills you, meets all the desires that you want, and allows you to have the necessary rest or whatever time and energy you're able to give to it.
Yeah.
So do you feel like you don't believe that job is out there, or you don't trust that you'll be able to get that job?
Probably trust. And I think part of that is I pretty readily don't have a hard time with belief. And I feel like I'm flexible enough that it is such a split desire because I do feel them both so strongly. And so I've been really in this weird place of going back and forth. But probably trust is where I'm always hung up a lot.
Well, and energetically, it's fun that you say that, going back and forth, because we see that show up in what's coming in your life. You're calling in the interview, but then you're pushing it away. And then you're calling in an interview, and then you're pushing it away. And so the universe is like, make up your mind. What do you want? Oh, you want it? Great. Here you go. Oh, you don't want it? Okay, let's get rid of it. Like,
yeah,
trying to find, it's always calibrating to you and what you are and what you want. So it's great to recognize that belief of like, somewhere is that aligned job where I can have both of them, but I'm not trusting that I can have that. And so I think your oscillation is also playing into helping us recognize that of in your own life, there's probably, oh, I lost you visually. Are we still here auditorily? Maybe. I'll hang out for a second, see if she comes back on. Also, I'm realizing, to those of you who are on Instagram watching this live, it's not showing the split screen of both of us. I think you've just seen me and been hearing Claire. Hopefully you've enjoyed hearing her talk, even though you haven't been able to see her. My YouTube channel, Emily Carolyn Baker, will have the whole video here that you can watch there as well. Oh, we lost her here. Okay. We'll see if I can get her back, but I'll just kind of wrap this up and point out that usually there is a deeper split that's going on, right? Playing out between work and rest, and not believing or trusting that you can properly integrate both of those into your life. And so if you're not able to do that on just a regular day-to-day experience, which is really common when you have some sort of chronic health condition, then that needs to be worked on and addressed first, to give yourself that permission that I can rest and I can do the things that I need to. So I'm going to see here if we can get her back, because it's fun. I can talk about ideas and ways you can work through this, but one of the key things that I'm always passionate about in my coaching is I'm not the source of answers. I'm not the lead on this. In their experiences, they are guiding us, they're directing us, they're letting us know what the solution is, what the answer is, how to get there. And it's sort of like the doctor shouldn't be able to treat a patient without experiencing them, the symptoms, and see what's going on. So we're glad you're back.
My tablet died. I didn't even realize it was low battery.
Oh, you're good. No worries. I was just pausing for a sec to say, I think a part of this is recognizing, I think this split on this specific topic is actually highlighting a deeper underlying one of a split between how are you feeling in general about rest and action.
Yeah. And I am naturally a person that likes to rest a lot, and I like to be home, and I've found so much healing the last year in doing that. And especially this last week, I've just had a lot of newness, like a new doctors and support, and emotionally and physically, and I felt really good. And so I'm really worried that if I take that leap and decide to start working, that I'll be set back a lot. So
yeah. So this is really fun because, as you kind of known, the different stages that we move through when we're growing and expanding, every time we enter a new stage, kind of what was working before stops working. And that's usually our indicator of like you're starting to shift into that next stage. And it's never a perfectly like I'm here, then I'm here, then I'm here, then I'm here. It's an oscillation, a vibration, if you will, as we're moving forward through it. So there's sometimes a back and forth, and it can be like, I thought I was here and now I'm back there again. Well, that's part of the oscillation of the momentum to moving forward. And so as you've even just been talking and sharing sort of your journey and your story, it was like I was living my life. Then I took this whole year off of just like giving myself this space and feeling like I really needed that. And I've come to accept it. And now you're ready for that next round of things where you're re-entering into more activity, more relationship, more work, more purpose. And there can be that feeling of, well, am I going to lose everything that I just gained? Am I going to go back to what I was experiencing before that triggered and caused me to have to take this year off? And I'm afraid of returning to that space, and I don't want to be experiencing that again. And that third cycle can sometimes be tricky as we're starting to move into it.
I've had that same thing show up in a certain relationship in my life where I've taken a break from a person that I've had a really, really difficult time with for the last 10 years. And I'm feeling ready to implement it again. But I'm terrified that I'm going to, my personal like barrier of peace that I've built up now is going to be like demolished again. That's actually why I went and found a new therapist, because I was having this like huge mental block. I knew there was probably some like trapped, really deep trauma, physical stuff that I was not, because usually I can work out those things pretty well on my own, but this was the instance. And even the job thing, I know it'll be okay either way, but I'm kind of stuck in this wanting the most ideal, like perfect experience. Cause I've had that a few times, like with a recent surgery that I had, it just was so good. Like I'm really, really hard, but also it turned out just exactly like I would have wanted it to. And after having an experience that's so aligned, it's hard to test the waters of having this experience that's not aligned, or that is harder.
Yeah. Okay, so many good things in there. Quick note we'll put out there is like, it's a common thing that a lot of people who work with me sometimes still have like a therapist, because like you said, they're different roles, they're different levels, you do different things. So just keep that in mind of like, just because you have one doesn't mean you don't have the other, different roles, different purposes, and helping with that. But then the second thing you're bringing up is, yes, this experience of like, once you start learning to be in alignment and more of your life comes from that place of ease, which ease is different than easy, right? There's still like the oscillations, we're still going up and down the mountains, but there's this flow to it, this underlying current that's carrying you as you're moving through it. And as a result, you get to have all of these cooperative components of the things that you're wanting. They just like start coming together and they start showing up. And so part of what I do is help people break out of their human trauma tendency to think that life has to be hard and I don't get what I want and there's not enough and I have to give things up, and to start getting into that place of I expect things to work out for me. I expect there to be ease. I expect to be able to have things that I want, and that what is right for me is right for others, and that there's this cooperative nature that can show up and can play out. And it starts out as just, okay, I'm going to test the waters. I don't know that I really believe this. And then you start having enough experiences and it's like, oh my gosh, I believe this. This is like becoming my new normal. And then you get really good at it. And you talked a lot about there's still struggle, there's still things, but this becomes the dominant lens that you're seeing the world through, instead of seeing it through such a place of everything is against me, everything is out to get me, everything is not enough, everything is so hard and difficult. That when there's those pieces of your life that show up, life presents to you opportunities to show you where you're not seeing through the new lens. You're still seeing a little bit through that old lens, and is saying, hey, do you want to trust that it can show up here? Do you want to trust that it can show up here? Do you want to trust that it can show up here? And in the beginning, it's kind of hard as you're gaining those experiences, but the more experiences that you have, the easier it begins to lean into that trust. But there are some of those core ones that are those biggest ones for us to really sort of lean into. And we're not meant to work through them on our own. We're supposed to be in this relationship dynamic. It creates that momentum. There's somebody there to lift you up and push you over the top, and to reach down and pull them up. And we get to have sort of this cyclical momentum that propels everyone forward. And so I want to acknowledge that desire of wanting to have this like ideal experience is a valuable one, is a desirable one, is coming from this good place. And something that we won't necessarily go into right now, but just for other people to be aware of, is that doesn't mean we just say, okay, whatever I want, I'm going to have it. And like, I'm just not even going to worry about things, right? We talk a lot about what is accessible right now. Right? And so we hold the vision and the desire of the thing we're going towards, and we recognize it's not usually a single step to get to that thing, that there's this is accessible, and this is accessible, and this is accessible. And that builds the momentum and is part of that current that gets you to the thing you want. And so finding what are those smaller step pieces that are bringing you closer and closer and closer to that ideal experience. And sometimes that is ruling out, that's not the right experience. That's not the right experience. Even when we think like, oh, this could be it. Oh, this could be it. And letting that anticipation fuel like the dream and give it more energy. But then if it's turned down, stay in that place of trust of, okay, it wasn't fully aligned. It's not fully the thing that I want. There's more that's coming more available.
Yeah. And I went through that experience with the first place that I interviewed with twice. And I, like the first time it didn't happen. And I thought, okay, well, another job came up and that one was part-time. And it seemed like that was even more accessible, but then went through the process, didn't hear back from them. The more I thought about it, I was like, I actually don't think I could pull those hours off with the way my husband works. And so then this third opportunity popped up, and it really was kind of everything that I needed it to be. But then I didn't hear back from them. And I just thought, oh, maybe I just won't worry about it. If it wasn't meant to be, I won't hear from them. But then my friend texted me right before we started this and was like, hey, did you hear back from them? She was like, well, it seemed like they were going to call and offer you the job, maybe, anyways. But she's like, you should reach out. And again, that voice was just like, well, maybe that's not right though, because they didn't call me, even though I know it probably is. So
well, and this is so great too, because this brings up another thing to practice, which is we want feedback that's always being given to us, and those are different signals for us, right? But we can't decipher those signals well when we are not in an aligned space. You're in an aligned space when you're feeling good. When you don't feel good, you're not in an aligned space. So taking that feedback, being like, oh, okay, I have new information, I have new knowledge here. What can I do to go get myself in a good feeling space? And then from that aligned space, I'm going to reassess this information, and I'm going to say, does it feel good for me to reach out or not? And if it does, then great. That was a signal that I needed to reach out, and I should, and I'm going to, and let's see what plays out from there. But if you're in that aligned space and you say, do I need to reach out, or should I just wait and see if they're going to call me? That's the space of, if you get wait, then it's okay. I know that that wasn't a signal coming from me. That was somebody else's external experience, and I don't orient myself to external things. I acknowledge external things as providing valuable information, but the decisions I make come from an internal place, and switching that whole orientation from being externally motivated or driven or reactive to internally centered and decisive. And that's what allows you to tap into that inner knowing, that connection to God, the divine, that intrinsic part of us that knows how to get you from where you are and where you want to go, and all the wonderful pieces of all your desires and what the other people you're working with want, and how you'll fit together, and how you'll help each other, and how you can grow together, and is gathering all of those cooperative components for you that are beyond our ability to detect, let alone comprehend or orchestrate. Like, that becomes the joy of living your life in alignment, is like, I couldn't have thought of this. I couldn't have planned this better. It just worked out. It fell into place so perfectly. And so that's what we're seeking and practicing doing, is finding that aligned space.
It's so hard, because I still, when I think about it, I think what felt right was letting them reach back out, because in the last two experiences, I kept having to reach back out, and it was kind of exhausting. I kept getting let down a lot. So I think it was time going into it. I just like, okay, I'm going to protect my alignment and my peace, kind of, and like, and it also just, I think it's a societal expectation for me of like, if you really want the job, you have to hustle, and you have to keep reaching back out, and you have to keep proving your worth. And I hate that. That does not feel good to me. And so I don't know. And so, yeah, again, the little, like, having my friend text me, it kind of like made me waver. Oh, like, maybe should I reach out then? Is it my job? But then I always back to, no, your job was to put the application in, show interest, do the interview, and in the interview, I was like, very like, I want to work here. So that's really helpful, because I think I am still moving in what feels like an aligned space, but I'm being pulled out of it by what I think other people think I should do.
And the key to that, again, is always coming back in, so identifying what you want, because you don't know what you want, you don't know how to read the information, right? And then from there, recognizing, when did I first start feeling off? Because when I first started feeling bad, that's your indicator that something changed. You pulled out of alignment. And so it was when your friend texted you, which that lets you know, okay, I no longer was in this aligned space. Why? Something changed. And what do I need to do to re-access that aligned space?
It initiated the feelings of, I'm not good enough, but when I'm just letting things flow, I don't have that experience. I've been able to just easily be like, oh, if it doesn't work out, that's okay. Like, it gave me a good experience of, putting an application and critiquing my resume and going through the interview process. So I know those things are all still helpful and positive. But when I go down the road of, oh, I didn't get the job, then I start feeling really negative, instead of just being okay with not getting the job.
Yeah. Well, and that's a part of this process too, of recognizing that there's always two right answers, right? Somebody will say you have to do this, the other person will say, no, you have to do this to get whatever it is that you want. And it's because it's all relative to your state of being, right? If this is the thing you want and you're over here, yeah, you need to move this way, and that's the correct thing to be doing. But if you're over here and you move this way, that's going to take you further from the thing that you want. And so that internal connection knows where your orientation is, and knows which way you need to swing more to get into that aligned space, and is calling in opportunities and experiences for you to practice this. So regardless of what ends up happening with the interview, you just being able to recognize, okay, I usually swing too far out into, I'm operating more from this urgency trauma, which trauma always results as a violation of our two components of our identity. I am good or I am safe. Right? And so when you can recognize that of like, oh, I'm in this response of feeling an urgency or a need, or that I have to be reaching out, I need to settle that down a little bit. But we can also get in that place of being like, I'm so removed and so disconnected. I'm not responding to those things that are aligned for me to be doing those actions. I do need to be reaching out towards. And so I can't tell you, nor can anybody else, if you should reach out or if you shouldn't reach out, because I'm not calibrated to your sensor. I'm calibrated to my sensor. The best I can do is help you learn to say, how are you feeling? Because your feelings are going to let you know, are you tilting too far this way? Are you tilting too far this way? And where do you need to move from that? And so this whole process is kind of shown, okay, I was in this place, I was feeling good about it. Somebody came in and said, hey, you need to move more this way. I started to move more that way. Ooh, that did not feel good. That pulled me out. I'm going to come back into this center space. I'm going to stay in this place of, I need to be in the state of being of things come to me. I'm receiving this. They'll reach out, they'll respond. And if there comes a point where you start not feeling good again, it could be because you're swinging out too far. And it's like, okay, now's the time. Now you need to reach out and respond to them, and that lets you know to do it. Or
So
somebody else.
into how I was feeling. I was just going into a trauma response again. Really, I was. So that's helpful to realize that I actually was feeling a lot of peace and clarity still. I wasn't like worried about it. I wasn't feeling urgent. Whereas in the other process, I was feeling that way, like, oh, I need to know, but I haven't been feeling that this time.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's that thing of, okay, so I'm feeling off now that I've been in peace. That may mean I need to reach out. So I think about reaching out and I test, how does that feel? And if that feels good, that means it pulled you back and that was the right thing to do. If it doesn't feel good, it'll be swinging you out more and you'll know, okay, there's something else going on here that I need to address that's pulled me out of this aligned space.
That's really helpful.
Yeah, cool. Well done. So beautiful way to see how the smallest little interactions, right? We allow people to swing us out one way or the other. We say, oh, well, maybe I need to be oriented to you and you're oriented over here. So I'm going to shift myself to that position. But when it's not right for us, we feel that dissonance and we feel that, and we can blame the other person or we can blame ourselves. And that just keeps us stuck there instead of acknowledging like, oh, that was part of my human experience. I swung out, I learned that's what's right. That's what they're thinking. That's where they are, but it's not where I'm supposed to be. And I know I can find where I'm supposed to be again. And that this pendulum is meant to perpetually swing back and forth. That's our, a compass, yes, always points north, but when you move, it still spins so that you can find that north, right? Yeah. It's not staying in the same place. And it's the same thing with us. We have that swing and it's letting us know so we can navigate through those things that are meant for us and that we want.
That's really cool. When you think about like different seasons of your life, you're still always oriented north, but you're going to be in a different quadrant. It's going to feel a lot farther away than some other times. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Claire. This has been so fun to get to chat with you and reminisce and share all about your experience and your story, and having this fun little coaching exercise, getting to see a taste of what it's like and how we never stop learning, right? You and I, we could go around forever. I learn things all the time. I'll be like, oh, that was such a fun session. I never thought about it that way before. And to just see what comes through, because again, it's not about the knowledge. It's not like all of this is just in my head. It's the connection, right? And what shows up as a result. So thanks for being here and doing it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I realized too that Instagram did not get to see you because the way I had it set up. So I'm just gonna put the camera here and let them say hi to. I can wait. Get to see your face a little bit as well. So thanks again for being here. Appreciate it. Okay.
Thanks.